the marketplace, trying to save the human race, struggling through the longest night. I'm gonna watch you shine, gonna watch you grow, gonna paint a sign. We always know, as long as 1 and 1 is 2. There could never be a father love his daughter more than I love you. And I'm gonna watch you shine, gonna watch you grow, gonna paint a sign so you'll always know, as long as 1 and 1 is 2. There could never be a father love his daughter more than I love you.
There could never be a daughter who loved her father more than I love you.
Thank you, Brooklyn and Stephen, father-daughter joining us, my daughter Lila here, and I, for this Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers who are here. We decided, in the theme of Trading Places, our summer theme, Lila and I decided that we were going to try to trade places. She would be the father, and I would be the child for a day. And so we had this experiment this week, and it was enlightening in many ways. And I guess I'm curious, Lila, what was your favorite part about the Trading Places?
Getting to watch TV when I wanted to.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. In the morning, she went right in and turned on the TV and kicked her feet up, and she was having a great time watching TV, which we usually don't let her do in the morning until she gets some other things done. But her mom got up immediately and just instinctively said, "Hey, you need to turn off the TV." And then I reminded her mom that, no, actually, she's the dad today, so she could do whatever she wants. So she watched TV for a while, but then I guess, let me ask you this. What was your least favorite part about being dad for a day?
Cleaning up.
Yeah, she finally realized that, when I got up, I said, I need some breakfast. So she had to cook me breakfast, and you did a really nice job cooking some eggs. I had to pull a few little shell shards out of the eggs, but generally a beautiful job. But then there was the cleaning up the dishes afterward, and there was a lot of planning and things. And Lila at one point said, "Wow, this is a lot more boring than I expected it to be." So it was. But what I realized more than anything in the whole experience was it was really hard to truly change places. The part about being a dad that's most significant is the responsibility that we take. And even though we were changing roles, I still had to make sure that the oven, that the flame wasn't up too high, and that the gas wasn't, that it was turned off on the stove when we finished. And I had to still drive us everywhere and make sure she had the medicine that she takes in the morning and all those things. So not being able to give away that responsibility was something that really stuck out for me when I realized that what really makes fatherhood. And so we'll talk a little bit more about this theme of trading places between father and daughter, but I just want to thank you, Lila, for being up here with me. This is the best Father's Day present that I could have. Thank you.
I know you can hear me all through the night.
Father's Day is such a interesting time to reflect on fatherhood, and we often talk in platitudes about dads, just as we sometimes do on Mother's Day about moms. And I, of course, have a specific message around trading places this morning, but I want to just acknowledge, because I think we have to sometimes just say it publicly, that, you know, part of being a dad that is so daunting for those of us who are fathers is that we hurt our children. There is not a person here who has a father that doesn't have a father wound within us. Some way in which our father wielded some kind of an axe blow to our heart, metaphorically, sometimes physically. But there's a way in which, as a father, loving my own children as much as I do, it's always daunting to realize that no matter what, we always do some things that hurt our children. And so I want to say, especially to those who are feeling that part of the father relationship today, to just know that you're not alone. We all carry some wounds from our fathers. And fathers, we're all here for each other, knowing that we've been there and been part of that. But this morning, my message is in two parts. Fatherhood is not about biology, and legacy is not about chronology. I think I'm going to change the title of this message when I put it up online to say, who's my father? Who's my father? Because unlike most parents, I had to prove that I'm Lila's father. I don't mean I had to prove it to others. I had to prove it to her. As a way of getting into this subject this morning, let me begin by acknowledging that there's a good reason that many parents cry on their child's first day of kindergarten. They are entering a bigger world than we can monitor and control. One of the greatest opportunities of public education is that children are exposed to different religions and backgrounds and people with different values and cultures. And one of the biggest challenges of public education is that our children are exposed to people with different religions and backgrounds and values and cultures. I don't think my daughter had any question in her mind about who her family was before she stepped into kindergarten. She knew that she's adopted, and she knew that her parents' and her brother's skin is a lot paler than hers. She's been conscious of race from a very young age. We have an open adoption. So she knows her biological family, her birth mother, her two half-siblings, her biological aunties and grandparents, and even her great-grandmother on her maternal side are all part of our lives. We visit them once a year, typically, and we always have a fabulous time when we're together. We're also connected on Facebook, so we see each other's comings and goings throughout the year. It's become more and more common, if you're not familiar, these open adoptions in the United States over the last decade or two. And even though it's more common these days, many people still don't quite understand it and find it to be quite peculiar. For decades, the identity of adopted parents were kept very secret. People couldn't even find them sometimes, even if they wanted to. And in many cases, people did not even tell their children that they were adopted. And sometimes they found out much later in their lives. Now, considering the difference in melanin in our skin, that would be a little bit hard to pull off in our case. But I think if I ever write a book about adoption, transracial adoption. I'm going to title it, Daddy, Who's That White Guy? Because that's the question that Lila asked me at age 5 when she was looking curiously at a poster in her brother's bedroom. She has an older brother, and she kept staring at it, and then she burst out, Daddy, who's that white guy? And it was a poster of Michael Jackson. And I realized then what a complicated world we live in, especially around this construct of race. Now, going back to the idea of open adoption, last Christmas vacation, Lila and we went to Alabama, and we were staying with her birth family. And on a Sunday morning, instead of going to church, they asked if I would lead a little service there in their home. And I had Lila and her siblings read out loud a short passage from Exodus chapter 2 in the Bible. Lila, would you go and share that passage? Now, if you don't know the story, the Pharaoh of Egypt ordered all the Jewish male babies to be killed because they were, of course, the Jews were slaves in Egypt, and they were starting to grow in so many in numbers that the Pharaoh was a bit scared that they were going to have too many and were going to take over. And so he asked that all the male babies be killed. Well, Moses was born, and his mother hid him to try to protect him from this decree from the Pharaoh. So, Lila?
When she couldn't hide him any longer, she took a basket made of papyrus plants and coated it with tar and pitch. She put the baby in it and set it among the papyrus plants near the bank of the Nile River. While Pharaoh's daughter came to the Nile to take a bath, her servants walked along the bank of the river. She saw the basket among the papyrus plants and sent her slave girl to get it. He was crying, and she felt bad. She felt sorry for him. She said, "This is one of the Hebrew children." Then the baby's sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Should I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse this baby for you?" She answered, "Yes." So the girl brought the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to the woman, "Take this child, nurse him for me, and I will pay you." She took the child and nursed him. When the child was old enough, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son.
Thank you. So after they read, each of them took turns, this passage, I asked why they think I chose that passage to read that morning. And eventually, after some discussion, we came to the realization that this was the first recorded open adoption. Moses was adopted by Pharaoh's daughter, but remained in relationship with his birth mother and his birth family. My message that morning was to show that open adoption is not some new invention, and it's not some peculiar modern form of family. Not only does it have ancient roots, from a biblical perspective, God uses adoption, and in this case, open adoption, as a part of the divine plan for our existence and our liberation. Moses, of course, led his people out of bondage. And even more than that, for Christians, Jesus was adopted. According to the scriptures, Joseph is not Jesus' biological father, yet he raises him. So in other words, two of the most consequential and liberating figures in the Bible are adopted. So fatherhood is clearly about something more than biology. And that brings me back to Lila's kindergarten class. As I said, before going to school, I don't think Lila had any questions about who her parents were. But one day, a couple of months into kindergarten, while driving her to school, Lila said to me, "You're not my father." I'm just driving along. And I said, "Excuse me? I sure am your father." "No, you're not." "I sure am." "Who drives you to school? Who makes your breakfast and lunch and feeds you dinner and gives you baths? Who wakes up with you in the middle of the night when you have a nightmare or when you're sick and comes and lays down with you and wraps his arms around you and sings to you until you can fall back asleep? Who reads you books every night and keeps you safe?" "I do. Your mom and I do." Now, I could tell that she was confused, and yet she could tell that I was crystal clear that I was her father. I wasn't confused. So she knew that I claimed her completely and fully without hesitation. Now, it turns out one or two of the children in her class had seen her mother come pick her up after school for many weeks, and they just probably assumed that her father must be African American. And so when I came and picked her up one day and they saw me, they realized, wait a minute, these can't be her parents. And so they told her that. And so then she had that question in her mind, which she was clearly checking out with me on the drive to school the next day. My question for all the fathers who are here and who are listening: if you were indicted on charges of being a father and put on trial, would there be enough non-DNA evidence to convict you? Because fatherhood is not biological in its essence. Now, if you've seen the movie Kung Fu Panda, there's a great scene about adoption, and I want to show you that scene right now. If you haven't seen the movie, just know that Kung Fu Panda, this giant adult panda, was adopted as a child by a goose. And this is the scene when he finally realizes and confronts the fact that he was adopted.
Where did I come from?
Well, you see, son, baby geese come from a little egg. Don't ask me where the egg comes from.
Dad, that's not what I meant.
I know it's not. I think it's time I told you something I should have told you a long time ago.
Okay.
You might have been kind of adopted.
I knew it.
You knew? Well, who told you?
No one. I mean, come on, Dad.
But if you knew, why didn't you ever say anything?
Why didn't you say anything? How did I get here, Dad? Where did I come from?
Actually, you came from this. It was just another day at the restaurant. Time to make the noodles. I went out to the back where my vegetables had just been delivered. There were cabbages, turnips, radishes. Only there were no radishes. Just a very hungry baby panda. There was no note. Of course, you could have eaten it. I waited for someone to come looking for you, but no one did. I brought you inside. Fed you. Gave you a bath. And fed you again. And again. and try to put some pants on you. And then I made a decision that would change my life forever. To make my soup without radishes. And to raise you as my own son. Xiaopo, my little panda. And from that moment on, both my soup and my life have been that much sweeter. And little Po, that's the end of the story. Look at me. No, don't look at me.
That's the end of the clip. So I hope you can see how adoption, I mean, I guess three of the most liberating characters, Moses, Jesus, and Kung Fu Panda, were all adopted, but truly it's a part of life. And I hope you can see how adoption is a kind of trading places and fits with this theme. So I began my message saying I wanted to talk about two things. That fatherhood's not about biology, but also that legacy is not about chronology. And the other way that I've traded places, so to speak, with one of my daughters is with my first daughter, Sienna, who died back in 2006. Under typical circumstances, as parents, we think of our children carrying on our legacy after we die. But when a child precedes us in death, their legacy becomes our responsibility. What I mean by this is that when Sienna died, and some of you remember that day very well, my wife and I were profoundly devastated. We were a mess. And the grief was deep, and there was no way to escape it. That was the worst part, was you just can't get away from it. And there were moments during that first year when we weren't sure that our marriage would survive. And there were times when I wondered whether my ministry could possibly survive, whether I could even do it anymore. And I could see, and in that time, why in the midst of tragedy and loss, people turn to booze and drugs and other things just to do anything to run away from the pain. What saved us more than anything was this church and our community, our family and our friends and my colleagues, both Unitarian, Universalist, and of other denominations and faiths, who loved us back into life, especially when it was really hard. And we were so thankful that we had the embrace of other people who would stick with us through the hard times. People who weren't afraid to talk about it, people who weren't afraid to let us cry. But one of the things that really encouraged us through this experience was the realization that her legacy was now in our hands. Her life story was either going to be a story about a young girl who came into this world for 3 years filled with love and with joy, and then she died. And in the wake of her death was all kinds of other devastation and destruction. If our family broke up, if my ministry went down, if we allowed ourselves to sink into a permanent untreated depression or addiction, her life and its legacy would have been a sad story of devastation. Yet my wife and I, as we realized this, and we realized that if we continued our work, the hard work of grieving and self-understanding with intention, and we continued to allow ourselves to grow, learning about ourselves more, learning about each other, about life and about love and about loss, then we would grow stronger and we would grow wiser and more compassionate as a result of the pain. Perhaps I could become an even better minister. Perhaps we could become an even stronger couple, perhaps even better parents instead. So even though it was excruciating to sit with the pain, to cry and hold each other through our tears, by choosing the road of healing and of growth, her life and her legacy is that she came into the world for 3 years, bounding with love and joy and exuberance. And then after she died, her love and her life inspired us to keep growing and to keep loving and to keep finding the essence of community and of life. Yes. So we traded places. We now carry her legacy on in this world. It's not the way we planned it. It's not the way we wanted it, but it's what happened. I would have traded places with her in a second. I would have given my life, if I could, so that she could have survived. But that was not an option. So we've done what we can to build on her life and on her legacy. Fatherhood is not about biology, and legacy is not about chronology. It's all about love. I love you. Happy Father's Day. Amen.
I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we sing our music together. It's in your order of service. How could anyone ever tell you? Let's sing it together. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
Hey, we're so happy you're visiting with us online today. We love connecting with people all across the country and around the world, sharing our powerful message of love beyond belief.
There's something new happening here. You can now join All Souls as a virtual member. Our virtual membership is designed for friends who live outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and who want to engage with All Souls in a meaningful way.
You can be part of an expanding family, a global family really, wherever you are. If you live in Oklahoma,
Ohio,
or Orange County, California,
Canada,
or Cameroon. By becoming a virtual member, you'll be able to deepen your connections with members and friends here in Tulsa and with members wherever you are.
Each week, you'll receive special All Souls content tailored for you, our virtual members. Virtual members have access to pastoral care, to personal prayers, and also receive invitations to exclusive web events.
You can learn more, and if you're ready, you can become a virtual member today by visiting allsoulschurch.org/virtual membership.
We're grateful our ministries are having a positive impact on your life, and we want to share the good news of love beyond belief with more and more people. So no matter what, we need your support to keep this ministry growing and thriving, so please consider making a gift today. You can do so by texting
LOVEBB for Love Beyond Belief to 73256, or simply visit our website. You are a blessing in our lives. May you be blessed
and be a blessing.